Page 32 continued. Examination of Matthew Arnold's criticism of Chaucer. Chaucer is sometimes denied a place amongst the very best, a place with Homer and Dante, because, as Matthew Arnold says, he lacks the high seriousness of the great classics. Matthew Arnold says, "To our praise, therefore, of Chaucer as a poet, there must be this limitation: he lacks the high seriousness of the great classics, and therefore an important part of their virtue." Arnold refused to accept Chaucer as one of the classics because, in his view, Chaucer lacked that gravity, that absolute sincerity which is found in Homer, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. Arnold said that Chaucer wrote in a mocking tone and in an ironical manner, and thus lacked absolute sincerity and gravity of tone. But this judgment of Arnold's is prejudiced one. G. K. Chesterton has pointed out that Chaucer was capable of gravity and high seriousness, which can be seen in the tale of Sir Thopas. To quote Chesterton, "There are things in Chaucer that are both austere and exalted, such as certain lines in his religious poems, especially his address to the Blessed Virgin. There are things in Chaucer that are both grim and violent, such as the description of death blow that broke the neck of the accuser of Constance." John Spears, S-P-I-E-I-R-S, Spears, also remarks, "The answer surely is that Chaucer's mature poetry of the human comedy has behind it the weight and gravity of his whole medieval civilization, English and European, religious and rational. Chaucer is rational with that high medieval rationality, and should in this respect also be associated with Shakespeare." The answer to Arnold's criticism of Chaucer is partly that Arnold was himself making the kind of personal estimate he condemned. He was expressing a preference for poetry of a kind and tone he did not find in Chaucer. Arnold tried to do justice to the comic and the robust, but he lacked the stomach for it, and lacking that, he failed to do justice to the nature of seriousness itself. Arnold says Lionel Trilling does not really mean seriousness at all. Arnold says that Lionel Trilling does not really mean seriousness at all. He means solemnity. He means the knowledge of how to be sick or sorry. But if Chaucer is not serious, then Mozart is not serious, and Molière is not serious, and seriousness becomes a matter of pince-nez glasses and a sepia print of the Parthenon over the bookshelf. End of page 32. Now page 33. But like Dryden, Arnold does not speak as though he had a real acquaintance with Troilus and Cressida. This work does not give us the God's plenty we find in the fragments of the Canterbury Pilgrimage, though as a sustained fiction, subtle in characterization, intense in emotion, as its points of climax, interweaving irony, comedy, and the tragic sense of disillusionment. It takes rank with the Canterbury Tales as one of Chaucer's two great achievements. One might have expected Arnold find in the Troilus more fortunate examples of what he meant by seriousness that the example he actually took from the prioress's tale. This story, based on the superstitions of ritual murders of Christians by Jews, is as good as any of the Canterbury tales of dramatic propriety. It is unmistakably the prioress who speaks in the choice of the story she tells, in every inflection of style, in the exacerbated exacerbated tenderness of the nun towards the idea of innocent childhood. In the hypertrophic medieval piety she expresses it in content. Of course, the tale hardly adds luster to Christian belief or practice. It seems odd that Arnold, in search of lines or snatches of poetry that might serve as touchstone to detect the very best and distinguishes it from the spurious or the inferior, should have chosen for Chaucer the cry of the murdered little Christian pupil, miraculously kept alive by the grain which the Virgin had placed on his tongue. My throat is cut into my neck bone. This is effective enough in its place, but a quaint piece of baggage to carry in one's mind as a talisman. H. W. Garrard once said of Matthew Arnold, "He thinks too much of the uses of literature and too little of its pleasure. He attaches too much importance to taste and too little to relish." That last is one of the reasons why Matthew Arnold never really understood Chaucer, for I can think of no other poet, Shakespeare being always hors concours, who brought to both books and life such relish and whose work is so instinct with zest. Whatever Chaucer touched, when what Byron called the estro was upon him, has a zest, a spontaneity, a raciness which are inimitable and unique. The specific difference of the Canterbury Tales is their immersion in life, which is tantamount to saying, to amend my metaphor, that they are dipped in Geoffrey Chaucer, the poet who wrote the closing stanzas of Troilus and the invocation to the Virgin in the prologue of the second Nun, and the prioress's prologue and tale, the noble ballad Truth, whose memory was enriched from the wisdom of Beatus and the Bible, who was moved by the beauty of the hymns and the service of the church, and who turned at will to the sublime cantos of the Purgatorio and the Paradiso. That poet was not deficient in seriousness, high or deep. He had to be sure no message, but his sanity. He is, said Dryden, a perpetual fountain of good sense. His sanity, his soundness, his freedom from sentimentality, his balance of humorous detachment and directness of vision, and above all, his large humanity, those are qualities which give us, to apply Arnold's own criterion, what we can rest upon, and we should be hard put to it to name another poet with clearer title to rank with those who, in Philip Sidney's words, teach by a divine delightfulness. Chaucer's other limitations examined. Chaucer is also charged by E. Albert for fondness for long speeches, for pedantic digressions on such subjects as dreams and ethical problems, and for long explanations when none are necessary. It has also been pointed out that, with a few exceptions, his poetry lacks the mysterious significance, the rich overtones which we now tend to make our exclusive demand from poetry. He had no message to deliver. Then he was not the poet of the people. He did not present the misery and discontent which had followed in the wake of the Black Death and the peasants' revolt. He possessed no lyrical gift of high order. All this is true, but we should not forget that Chaucer was the poet of the earth, supremely content to walk, desiring no wings. Except Chaucer, no poet of greatness has been in love with earth for its own sake. He accepts the world as it is and loves human beings as he finds them, without moralizing their vices. He has sanity, soundness, freedom from sentimentality, balance, and above all, his large humanity. These are the qualities which rank him in the company of Homer, Virgil, Dante, Shakespeare, and Milton. Chaucer's place in English literature. Chaucer was fitted by both natural genius and the circumstance of his life to become the most technically accomplished, the most widely ranging, and the most universally appealing of medieval English writers, and indeed one of the most skillful and attractive of English writers of any period. End of page 33, now page 34. He was the first English poet who combined the French and the Italian streams of literature and brought forth a type of poetry unrivaled in its sunny atmosphere and realism. His sunny soul provided him themes with an inexhaustible flow of humor which tinged all incongruities with sympathy and distinguished him from his bitter contemporary, Langland and Morel Gower. He was one of the finest of literary artists, and his services to the English language, metre and diction were immense. He founded like the English language and literature, each being indispensable. He founded alike the English language and literature, each being indispensable to file another. Chaucer alone was to England nearly all that Boccaccio and Froissart and Petrarch and Dante were to Italy about the same period. Chaucer found his country without a literature. He lifted it rich in the possession of works. He felt it rich in the possession of works, especially the Canterbury Tales, not only rival to the hour but the greatest productions of human genius, but was confessedly confused in a direct and powerful degree the minds of his own illustrious successors. Spencer drank of Chaucer's well of English. Shakespeare was delighted to borrow from him, while Milton expressed his hurtful desire hurtful desire. To call him who left half told the story of Cambuscan who bowled. Chaucer is great not only by his historical position but also because of his genius. He is one of the greatest poets of the world. In the Middle Ages, he had no superior save Dante, and if Dante is more sublime, Chaucer is at least more human. Indeed, in his thoroughly human quality of his best work, he yields to Shakespeare alone. That's, that this estimate of Chaucer's rank is not exaggerated may be attested by the universal appreciation which he has received for 5 centuries and more. The 15th century was filled with his name. In the age of Elizabeth, he had been praised and imitated by Spenser, Sidney, Shakespeare, and Fletcher. Milton lauded him, and even in the age of neoclassicism, he was highly appreciated by Dryden and Pope. The 19th century had endorsed his criticism, this judgment by the mouths of the greatest poets and by the mouths of its greatest poets and critics, and it is safe to say that Chaucer's fame has never stood brighter than any it is today. To Chaucer's name eternal trophies raise, and load the antique stone with wreaths of bays. A father of verse, who is immortal song, who first triumph is one who does first taught the muse to speak the English tongue. Freshness and simplicity of style, gentle humor, quaint fun, hearty praise of what is good and true, kindly ridicule the weakness and foibles and kindly ridicule our weakness and foibles, and earnest denunciation of music and oppression are among his most naked characteristics. Development of poetry in the age of Chaucer. Among the contemporaries of Chaucer, the pride of place is given to John Gower, William Langland, and John Barber of Scotland. In the sphere of poetry, these poets left behind a rich harvest of literature, and their contribution to English poetry is quite substantial.